Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Eerie Hour. Today, I've got something truly chilling for you. Long, detailed cruise ship stories that might make you think twice before planning your next ocean getaway. In this episode, we'll dive into the dark and dangerous depths of the open sea with 8 horrifying tales of terror aboard luxury cruise liners, inspired by true events from passengers who faced nightmares they could never forget. Each story has been carefully researched, based on the disturbing experiences of real people who learned that paradise at sea can quickly become a drifting prison of fear. From mysterious vanishings in the dead of night to twisted predators hiding in the glowing hallways of giant ships, these stories reveal the grim truth behind the glossy promises of the cruise industry. To protect those involved, some names and small details have been changed, but the horrors remain as real as ever. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Eerie Hour for daily true horror stories that'll make you second-guess every vacation plan. Hit that bell so you never miss when the darkness comes calling, because out here on these waters, things run far deeper and far darker than they appear. I had been counting down the days to this trip, 7 peaceful days cruising through the Caribbean aboard the Royal Majesty, a giant ship that could hold more than 3,000 people. As a software engineer from Phoenix, I didn't get many breaks. This trip was my chance to finally unwind, unplug from the stress of work, and maybe lose myself in a few good books while floating through perfect blue water. I booked an interior cabin on deck 7. Nothing fancy, but comfortable enough for a solo traveler. The room was small but neat, with a queen bed, a small desk, and just enough space for my things. The first day was everything I had hoped for. Exploring the ship, trying new restaurants, watching the sun disappear over the sea. By the time I went back to my cabin, I was tired in the best possible way. The ship rocked gently, a motion I found strangely soothing. While some people get seasick, it actually helped me fall asleep faster than I had in years. Around 10:30 that night, I was in pajamas, teeth brushed, ready to fall into the kind of deep sleep you only get when you feel completely safe. I locked the door, engaged the deadbolt and chain, just as the crew advised during the safety drill. It was a habit of mine. Living alone had taught me to always double-check locks. My cabin felt secure, cozy, almost like my own little sanctuary floating across the ocean. The first few hours of sleep were perfect, deep, dreamless, peaceful. But sometime early in the morning, something began pulling me out of it. Not suddenly, but slowly, like my mind was drifting toward waking up. My eyes stayed closed, my body heavy, when I realized I could hear something strange. Breathing. Not mine, but someone else's. It was slow, steady, deliberate, and it was coming from somewhere inside my cabin. My eyes snapped open. The room was dark except for the dim glow of the clock on my nightstand, 3:17 a.m. I held my breath, praying I had imagined it. Then I heard it again, the soft, rhythmic sound of someone else breathing. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and that's when I saw it, a faint shape sitting in the small chair by the desk. A person, completely still, facing me, watching. My heart slammed so hard against my chest I was sure whoever it was could hear it. How long had they been sitting there? How long had they been watching me sleep? I tried to keep breathing evenly, pretending to still be asleep while my mind raced. Had I forgotten to lock the door? Did someone get the wrong room key? Was this some terrible mistake? The figure shifted slightly and a sliver of light from under the door revealed pale skin. No uniform, not crew. Whoever it was didn't belong there. Slowly, I moved my hand toward the lamp on my nightstand. If I could switch it on fast enough, I might startle him, maybe scream loud enough for someone to hear. The walls were thin. Someone had to hear me. But as my fingers touched the switch, the figure spoke, a quiet whisper that made my stomach drop. "I know you're awake, Marcus." He knew my name. Hearing it in that calm, unfamiliar voice made my blood run cold. I flicked on the lamp. The sudden light filled the small cabin. Sitting in the chair was a man I'd never seen before, middle-aged, average height, wearing khaki pants and a polo shirt. He looked completely normal. Too normal. But his eyes were sharp, intense, unblinking. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How did you get in here?" He smiled, a polite, almost friendly smile. "You're a very sound sleeper, Marcus." "I've been here for almost 2 hours." My stomach twisted. He had been sitting there in my room for 2 hours, just watching. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. He leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to see if you're as interesting asleep as you are awake," he said in an almost casual tone. "You talk in your sleep sometimes." "Did you know that?" I reached for the phone to call security, but he moved faster than I could react. In one motion, he stood and placed his hand over the phone. "I wouldn't do that yet," he said softly, still calm, still smiling. "We're just getting to know each other." "Get out of my room," I said, forcing the words out. "Get out, or I'll scream." He tilted his head like he was considering it. "You can try," he said, almost amused. "But the walls are thicker than you think. Most of your neighbors have been drinking all night. No one's going to hear you." The way he said it made me realize he'd done this before. He knew the ship. He'd studied it. He'd studied me. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can take my wallet. It's right there." He chuckled softly. "I don't want your money, Marcus. I want to understand you. I've been watching you since you boarded. You're quiet. You keep to yourself. You read instead of talking to people. You're like me." My stomach turned. "I'm nothing like you." "Oh, but you are," he said calmly. "We both watch. We both notice things. The only difference is what we choose to watch." I glanced toward the door. If I could just make it past him. But he seemed to sense my thoughts. "It's locked," he said quietly. "I engaged the deadbolt after I came in. You'll have to get through me first." My heart pounded. "How did you even get in?" "Crew members aren't the only ones with master keys," he said. "Security is mostly an illusion on ships like this." He stepped closer, and I pressed myself back against the headboard. "What do you want?" I whispered. "I want you to remember this," he said. "I want you to know that I was here, that I could have done anything I wanted, and that I chose not to." This time, that last part sent chills crawling across my skin. He pulled a small card from his pocket. It looked like a hotel key. "Master access," he said, unlocking the door with ease. "Works on most cabin doors made in the last 5 years." He turned back before stepping out. "Enjoy the rest of your cruise, Marcus. Try not to sleep too soundly." And then he was gone. The door closed softly, leaving me frozen under the light, shaking. I jumped up, locked everything again, and shoved the chair against the door. Then I called security. 15 minutes later, an officer arrived. But the man was gone. The hallway camera for my section? Malfunctioning, they said. I didn't sleep for the rest of the trip. Each night, I sat in that same chair, staring at the door, flinching at every noise. During the day, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder, wondering if he was somewhere out there among the crowds, still watching me. On the last night, I found a note under my door, typed neatly on cruise ship stationery. "Sweet dreams, Marcus." Until next time, I never went on another cruise after that. But even back home in Phoenix, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, feeling like someone's watching me. And I remember what he said about privacy being an illusion, about people like him being able to come and go whenever they please. Because he was right. Security, no matter where you are, is often just an illusion. Whether you're floating on a ship in the middle of the ocean or lying safely in your own bed, once someone decides to find you, the line between safety and danger becomes terrifyingly thin. By 10 o'clock that night, we were in the lounge, holding fruity cocktails and laughing at old jokes, dancing like we were back in college again. I was wearing a black dress I had bought just for this trip, something my ex would have said was too revealing, but it made me feel confident for the first time in years. It felt good to be noticed again. For once, men were looking at me with interest instead of boredom. One man in particular caught my attention. He was tall, maybe in his late 30s, with dark hair and an easy, disarming smile. He introduced himself as James and said he was traveling alone, mixing a bit of vacation after a business conference in Miami. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. When he offered to buy us another round of drinks, Megan nudged me and whispered, "You deserve this." He seems nice. James was friendly without being pushy. He asked about my job as a graphic designer, laughed at my stories about picky clients, and shared some of his own about working in sales. There was something about the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room, that made me forget every moment I'd ever felt small or unwanted. After years of being ignored, the attention felt like oxygen. Around midnight, Megan said she was getting tired and wanted to head back to the cabin. "Are you staying a bit longer?" she asked. I looked at James, standing at the bar, ordering us more drinks. The music was still pounding, the energy electric, and I was finally having fun again. "Just for a little while," I told her. "I'll text you when I get back." Those were the last clear words I remember saying. Everything after that came in fragments. James handing me a glowing blue cocktail that tasted stronger than the rest. Dancing close to him while the room seemed to twist and blur around us. His hand resting on my back, steadying me as the floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Then darkness. The next thing I knew, I was waking up somewhere I didn't recognize. My head felt thick and heavy, my mouth dry, and my body sore in ways that made my stomach turn. I was lying on a couch in what looked like a crew break room, small, windowless, harshly lit by flickering fluorescent lights. I was still wearing my black dress, but it was wrinkled and twisted. My underwear was gone. The air smelled like cleaning chemicals and something sour underneath. I tried to sit up, but the movement made the room spin violently. My phone was beside me on the floor. When I grabbed it, the time made my heart stop. It was past 3 in the afternoon. I had lost nearly 15 hours. The door opened suddenly, and a man in a white uniform stepped inside. He froze when he saw me, his eyes wide with surprise, or maybe recognition. "Miss, you should not be here," he said with an accent I couldn't place. "This area is for crew only." "I don't know how I got here," I croaked. "Can you help me get back to the passenger decks?" His face changed, maybe showing concern or maybe irritation. "You were brought here last night, very drunk. Someone said you needed a safe place to sleep it off." "Someone brought me here?" and I asked. "Who?" He shrugged. "I was not working last night. Come, I will show you to the elevator." He led me through narrow metal corridors I had never seen before, twisting paths behind the ship's bright public areas. The ceilings were low, the air hot and stale. Machinery hummed all around us. We passed crew members who glanced at me, some with curiosity, others with looks I couldn't read. "This happens sometimes," my escort said as we waited for a service elevator. "Passengers drink too much, get lost, end up where they shouldn't." But I knew that wasn't it. I had been drunk before. This wasn't that. Something had been slipped into my drink. When I finally reached my cabin, Megan threw her arms around me, her face pale with worry. "Where were you?" she cried. "I've been calling security all night." They searched the ship, the medical bay. I thought something terrible happened. I told her everything I could remember, though it wasn't much. The blue drink, dancing, then waking up half-dressed in that crew area. She went quiet, her face turning white. "Jess, we need to report this." "Now report what? That I got drunk and wandered off?" "No," she said firmly. "You were drugged, and someone hurt you." The security office was on deck 3, a cold, sterile place that felt more like a police station than part of a cruise ship. The officer taking my statement was a woman named Officer Martinez. Her tone was calm but serious. "Can you describe the man you were with?" she asked. I told her everything I could remember about James, but realized how little I actually knew. His name, his job, his smile. That was it. There were hundreds of men who could fit that vague description. "We'll check the lounge cameras," she said, "and we'll need you to see the ship's doctor." The medical exam confirmed my worst fear. There were signs of sexual activity, and the doctor, an older man named Dr. Foster, found traces of a drug commonly used in assaults. "It's almost out of your system now," he said softly. "By the time we reach port, it may not show clearly in lab tests." Later, Officer Martinez returned, her expression grim. "The lounge cameras malfunctioned last night," she said. "They stopped recording during the exact hours you were there." Convenient, I muttered. It happens sometimes with the ship's systems, she replied, but her tone said she didn't buy it either. So there's no proof? I asked quietly. We're still investigating, she said, but no one remembers seeing you with anyone like the man you described. That didn't make sense. James had been the center of attention, buying drinks, talking to people. How could no one remember him? Over the next few days, I started to notice whispers around the ship. A woman by the pool said her friend blacked out after a stranger bought her a drink. Another mentioned waking up in a crew area with no memory of how she got there. Megan gathered more stories. It's happening more than anyone admits, she told me. Most women don't report it. They're too scared or think no one will believe them. On our last night, I was packing when Megan knocked on the bathroom door, her face pale. Jess, you need to see this. She was holding a folded note that had been slipped under our door. It was typed neatly on cruise ship stationery, the same kind Marcus had found in his story. The message was short. Thank you for a memorable evening, Jessica. Your friend Megan is next. My stomach dropped. He was still on the ship, still watching, and he wasn't finished. We spent that entire night barricaded inside our cabin, taking turns staying awake, listening for footsteps in the hall. Security doubled their patrols, but I knew it didn't matter. Someone who could drug passengers, bypass cameras, and enter crew areas could easily avoid a few guards. When we disembarked the next morning, I filed a police report, but because it happened in international waters, there was almost nothing they could do. The cruise line promised an investigation, but I never heard back. 6 months later, I found an online support group for cruise assault survivors. There were dozens of stories like mine, different ships, different faces, but the same pattern: charming men who vanished afterward, camera failures, missing evidence, and lost memories. That's when I learned the truth. Cruise ships are like floating cities with almost no oversight, places where predators can move in the shadows and disappear without consequence. The laws are complicated, the jurisdiction blurry, and the companies do everything they can to keep things quiet. I never found out who James really was, or if that was even his real name. But I did learn something that stuck with me. When someone tells you that you deserve to have fun, make sure you can trust them to keep you safe while you do it. Because out in the middle of the ocean, far from home and surrounded by strangers, fun can turn into survival. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you remember just enough to realize how close you came to never making it back. I have always been the kind of person who needs to understand how things work. As a mechanical engineer from Seattle, I'm endlessly curious about systems, structures, and the hidden machinery that keeps everything running. So when I boarded the Celestial Voyager for a 7-day Mediterranean cruise, I was just as excited to explore the ship itself as I was to see the ports. The Celestial Voyager was one of those giant floating cities, towering over 15 decks high and carrying nearly 4,000 passengers. I couldn't stop marveling at how something so massive could float and move so smoothly through the open ocean. During the day, I'd wander through the public areas, studying the ship's designs and hidden systems, from the stabilizers that kept us steady to the water treatment plants running deep below. But during the safety briefing on the first day, I noticed something strange. The crew member listed decks 1 through 12, then skipped directly to 14. When I asked about deck 13, she smiled politely and said it was a service deck, off limits to passengers. Her answer was too neat, too rehearsed. Most buildings skip the 13th floor because of superstition, but ships weren't supposed to care about bad luck. That small mystery stuck in my mind, gnawing quietly until curiosity finally won. For the first 3 days, the cruise was peaceful. We visited Barcelona and Nice, and at night I roamed the quieter halls after most people had gone to bed. I liked the sound of the engines humming deep below, the way the ship seemed alive in its own mechanical rhythm. On the fourth night, while sailing toward Rome, I decided to find out what really lay between decks 12 and 14. I found a narrow metal stairwell tucked behind the stern, no decorations, just plain gray walls and cold railings. I climbed the stairs and stopped at what should have been deck 13. There was no warning sign, No locked gate, just a dim corridor stretching in both directions, lit by emergency bulbs that flickered slightly, throwing long, twitching shadows across the floor. It looked like a regular passenger hallway, same carpet and wall panels, but there were no cabin doors. Instead, large metal panels lined the walls, each with bolts and small handles, like sealed compartments. The air felt heavier there, cool and damp, carrying a faint metallic scent mixed with something old and sour that made my skin prickle. The ship's motion felt different too, as if the deck swayed slower, deeper. About halfway down, I noticed one of the panels was slightly open. My instinct screamed to turn back, but curiosity pushed me forward. I pulled the panel wide enough to slip through and froze. Inside was a passenger cabin, but it looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Dust covered every surface. A suitcase sat open on the bed, half unpacked. Clothes spilled out in faded colors. A paperback lay open on the desk beside a pair of reading glasses. Even a coffee cup rested on the nightstand. The liquid inside dried into a brown ring. Everything looked as if someone had vanished mid-action. I picked up the book. The copyright date read 1987. The ship itinerary on the desk said, Oceanic Dream, not Celestial Voyager, with ports listed for September 1987. My heart started pounding. I knew that cruise companies sometimes reused parts from older ships to build new ones, but this was different. It felt like the entire cabin had been lifted from another ship, sealed and hidden away like a preserved tomb. I stepped back, meaning to leave, when I heard slow footsteps in the corridor outside. They paused right outside the panel. I held my breath. After a long silence, they moved on, fading down the hall. I crept out and tried more panels. Most were locked, but the fifth opened easily. Behind it was another cabin, this one even older, with clothes from the 1970s and a cruise schedule for a ship called the Mediterranean Star, dated Pandurn, August 1976. Every hidden room I found told the same story. Old belongings, itineraries, ships long forgotten. The cabins seemed frozen at the exact moment their occupants vanished. Some had photos of smiling couples. Others had toys, letters, or half-finished drinks. The latest items I found were from the 1990s. Nothing newer. In the eighth cabin, I discovered a photo album lying open on a desk. The pictures showed passengers laughing, dining, dancing under chandeliers. But every face looked wrong. Their smiles were wide, but their eyes were empty, distant, as if they weren't really looking at the camera. Or maybe they couldn't. The final photo made my stomach twist. It showed a group of people standing in the very corridor I was in, arranged in a line in front of the metal panels. They had that same empty stare. The photo looked fresh, like it had been taken recently. That's when I heard the footsteps again, but this time, more than one pair. Low, whispering voices floated through the corridor, too soft to understand, yet filled with urgency. The voices seemed to echo from every direction, some distant, others whispering close enough to feel the breath at my neck. My name echoed among them. David! David Park! Come join us, David! My body froze. I hadn't told anyone my name on this ship. I dropped the photo album and ran. As I sprinted toward the stairwell, I heard the metal panels sliding open all at once, a chorus of metallic groans that chased me through the hallway. I didn't dare look back. I threw myself into the stairwell, slamming the door behind me, and ran until I reached the passenger decks. The next morning, I searched the ship's Wi-Fi for the names I had seen: Oceanic Dream, Mediterranean Star, and others. Each one had a disturbing history. They'd all operated in the Mediterranean decades ago, and all had reports of passengers who had mysteriously vanished from their cabins. No bodies, no accidents, no explanations. The ships were later retired due to so-called mechanical failures, but insurance documents hinted at the truth. Too many disappearances to ignore. I spent the next 3 days digging through the Celestial Voyager's history. The company claimed the ship was built entirely from new materials, but construction records told another story. Parts of older ships had been reused, including entire deck sections. The blueprints showed no Deck 13 at all. That space was supposed to be part of the ballast system, not passenger areas. Somehow an entire deck from one of those vanished ships had been absorbed into this one, complete with its rooms and whatever still lingered inside them. On the last night of the cruise, I went back. I told myself I needed proof, but when I reached the same spot, the corridor looked different. Gone were the metal panels. In their place were neat cabin doors, numbered and perfectly normal. The carpet and lights matched the rest of the ship. But when I tried the doors, they were all locked. From behind one of them, I heard muffled movement, soft footsteps, the sound of drawers opening. Someone was in there. I knocked. Everything went silent. After a pause, I tried again. "Hello? Is everything okay in there?" I said quietly. Then a voice answered, calm and familiar. "We're fine, David. We've been waiting for you to join us." The words made my blood run cold. No one knew my name. Not here. I backed away as the door handle rattled. Then one by one, the other doors began to open. I didn't wait to see what came out. I ran down the stairwell, my heart hammering until I reached my cabin. I locked the door and sat awake all night, staring at the handle, waiting for it to turn. When we docked in Barcelona, I was the first off the ship. I've never taken another cruise since. Now, before booking any hotel or trip, I always check to see if it was built using parts from older structures, because what I learned on Deck 13 stays with me. When pieces of old places are rebuilt into new ones, sometimes more than the walls and steel survive, sometimes the people who were lost in them do too, and they're still waiting for someone to join them on their endless voyage. The Mediterranean air was warm as I stood on the private balcony of cabin 8247, watching the sun dip below the Italian coast. After 6 painful months of divorce and custody battles, this trip was supposed to mark a new beginning for me. My name is Rebecca Martinez, 35 from San Antonio, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The Adriatic Princess was everything the brochure promised: luxurious, peaceful, and elegant. I'd booked a balcony cabin because I wanted to wake to the sea and sleep to its rhythm. I hadn't expected to meet anyone like Andrew. I first saw him by the pool on the second day, sitting at the bar, sipping a drink and watching the crowd like he was studying them. When our eyes met, he smiled and raised his glass. That simple gesture was enough to make me notice him. We officially met that evening in the dining room. I was eating alone when he approached. "Mind if I join you?" he asked with a charming grin. "Eating solo on a cruise feels wrong." He was confident, funny, and carried himself like someone who had seen the world and learned how to read it. He told me he was from Portland, worked in real estate, and was celebrating a big deal. Over the next few days, we spent nearly every moment together: breakfasts, shore visits, dinners, and late-night drinks. He was patient, never pushy, and always attentive. After years of feeling invisible, his attention felt like sunlight. By the 5th night, I had fallen for him completely. We danced under the ballroom lights until my feet hurt. When he suggested ending the night on my balcony with a bottle of wine, I didn't hesitate. He returned with an expensive-looking bottle of Chianti. The stars reflected in the water below, and for a moment everything felt perfect. "Thank you," I said, smiling. "This week has meant more to me than you know." He smiled back. "You deserve it. Your ex was a fool." The wine was rich and smooth, but after a few sips, I started to feel strange. My words slurred. My limbs felt heavy. I hadn't drunk that much. Andrew leaned closer. "You're fine," he said softly, but something in his tone had changed. His eyes looked colder, his smile wrong. When his hand gripped my arm, it was too firm. Panic crept up my throat. "I think I should go inside," I said. "Why would we do that?" he asked, stepping behind my chair. "We have such a beautiful view." My vision blurred as I tried to stand. My body didn't respond the way it should have. That's when I realized it wasn't the wine. Something was in it. "Let me go," I said, my voice weak. He leaned closer, his shadow blocking the moonlight. "No, Rebecca," he said, his tone smooth and empty. "We're not done yet." Up close, his face looked completely different. Cold, empty, and dangerous. Gone was the warm, caring man I thought I had fallen for. "What did you put in my wine?" I asked, trying to sound calm even though fear was choking me. "Just something to help you relax," he said softly, like it was no big deal. "You've been so tense all week, always overthinking. This will help you let go." My stomach turned as I realized the truth. None of it had been real. The friendly meeting, the long talks, the dinners, the attention he gave me, it was all part of his plan. I was trapped on a balcony in the middle of the ocean, alone with him, and no one would hear me scream. "People will notice if I go missing," I said, even though I knew deep down that no one would. I had spent most of the cruise alone, keeping to myself. "Will they?" he asked, stepping closer. "You're traveling solo. You've barely spoken to anyone, and tomorrow there's no port, just open sea. By the time anyone starts asking questions, we'll be hundreds of miles away." The railing behind me was only waist high, more for looks than safety. Below us, the ocean was pitch black and endless, rushing past at terrifying speed. That's when I realized what he really intended. He didn't want to hurt me here. He wanted to make me vanish. "You've done this before," I whispered. His smile returned, the same charming one that had fooled me days ago. "Solo female travelers are easy," he said. "So trusting, so desperate to believe that someone sees them." My heart pounded as I tried to plan an escape. The sliding door was behind him, but he stood perfectly in my way. The drug made everything harder. My arms felt heavy, and my thoughts came slow. But I could still think. He needed me to cooperate. If he was trying to make this look like an accident, he couldn't risk signs of a fight. That was my only advantage. "You're right," I said, forcing my voice to sound weak and broken. "I have been lonely. I just wanted someone to care about me." His eyes softened slightly, his confidence returning. "You don't have to think of it that way," he said smoothly. "We had good times. You can remember those." He reached out and touched my face, pretending to be gentle, but his hand felt like ice. I knew it was now or never. My hand shot out, grabbing the wine bottle from the table. I swung with everything I had. The bottle smashed against his head with a sickening crack. Blood poured down his face as he stumbled back, clutching his temple. "You bitch!" he roared, lunging at me with rage in his eyes. I fell out of the chair, crawling toward the door, my body trembling but still moving. His hand caught my ankle, nails digging into my skin. I kicked hard, freeing myself and reaching the sliding door handle. In my panic, my fingers slipped. The lock wouldn't budge. I could hear him behind me, staggering to his feet, the blood running down his face, making him look monstrous. Finally, the lock clicked, and I yanked the door open. I stumbled inside, slammed it shut, and threw the latch across. My hands shook as I grabbed the cabin phone. "Security, this is cabin 8247, I cried. "There's a man on my balcony trying to kill me." The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "Stay on the line, ma'am. Officers are on their way. Don't open the door for anyone except security." Through the glass, I could see him outside, pacing like a caged animal. He pressed a towel against his bleeding head, watching me with those cold, dead eyes. He wasn't trying to break in anymore, but he wasn't leaving either. Within minutes, there was a knock, followed by uniformed officers entering the room. Two stayed with me, while another opened the balcony door. But when the glass slid open, the balcony was empty. "Where did he go?" I asked, staring at the dark waves below. "There's nowhere to go from here," one of them said quietly. "Either back inside or over the edge." They searched the entire cabin, checked the hallway cameras, and questioned nearby passengers. But it was like he had vanished into thin air. They found the blood-stained wine bottle and the towel he'd used, but there was no sign of him anywhere. The officers took my statement, promising to investigate, but I could see in their eyes that they doubted parts of my story. I spent the rest of the cruise in another cabin, guarded by security, afraid to sleep. When the investigation ended, they told me something that chilled me to the bone. There was no record of any passenger named Andrew on the ship. The man I'd spent 5 days with didn't exist. His ID, his room, his name, everything was fake. Somehow he had passed through all the checks unnoticed. Later I learned from my victim advocate that I wasn't the first. Over the last 3 years, 17 women had gone missing from different Mediterranean cruises. Every one of them had been traveling alone, recently divorced or widowed, and most of them had last been seen with a man matching Andrew's description. The cruise company paid me off quietly. They gave me counseling and promised to keep it out of the media. But one of the investigators told me the truth off the record. Crimes at sea are nearly impossible to solve. Once you're in international waters, laws blur and justice fades. No one could prove what happened on that balcony. No one could even prove who he really was. They said he must have fallen or maybe jumped, but his body was never found. I didn't believe that. He was too careful, too deliberate. He had done this before. He knew the ship like, sometimes I wonder if he found another way off that balcony, some hidden passage through the maintenance decks or crew quarters. Cruise ships are massive, full of places passengers never see. Maybe he walked among the crew in a stolen uniform, smiling that same charming smile as if nothing had happened. All I know is that I survived when 17 others didn't. If I hadn't sensed something was wrong, if I hadn't acted in that split second, I'd have been next. The experience changed me forever. I learned that evil doesn't always come with a knife or a mask. Sometimes it wears a kind face, speaks gently, and knows exactly what to say to make you trust it. The most dangerous monsters are the ones who look human, who study your pain and use it against you. And the only thing that saves you is recognizing when charm turns into danger, and finding the strength to fight back, even when it feels impossible.